afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Friday edition of KO Podcast Home. So, it's been a long week. It started off with the rainstorms on Monday. That was fun. It's been coldish. It's been, don't forget your coat, don't forget your jacket weather, but it's also been middle of the day. Oh, this is nice. Don't need the jacket right now, sort of weather. But at night, it's been cold, and there's something about the cold and sunshine where it's just like torture. It's like, I want to go outside, and it's too damn cold. Okay, so anyway, next week I'm going to see Avengers. So that's going to be on Friday or Saturday. It's a little bit up in the air at the moment. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm going to be putting out the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even though it's all one big universe, like there's certain things that don't line up when you consider like the TV, the Netflix, and the movies. So I'm gonna have Phase 1. I'm gonna shoot Monday, or I'm gonna try and shoot these all together. But Phase 1 is gonna come out on Tuesday. Phase 2 is gonna come out on Wednesday, and Thursday is gonna be Phase 3. And then Friday it's gonna be my regular YouTube video plus my reactions to Avengers Infinity War, which I want to get into next week, more in depth. But like, I looked it up. I was like, are we on Phase 4 yet? And I was like, and I only realized like Avengers Infinity War isn't even the last part of Phase 3. Like, once, like, according to Wikipedia, so don't go too intent on this, but Wikipedia has Infinity War being like the second or third to last. Then goes Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then maybe there's a third movie that's still left aside from Infinity War, but it's going to be Avengers 4, which they haven't even released the title. So when there's a like, the Avengers will return in whenever that card appears. I'm curious if that's where they're gonna like let people know the new name of the Avengers 4, which to my knowledge is being either finished or shot, or I don't know about reshot, but they shot both movies, because I can only imagine the logistics of getting 63 stars or principal cast members, like, schedules lined up so that they can shoot this stuff. Because the trailers already let us know that Peter Quill, Star-Lord, and Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., who's not... Okay, Tony Stark. They're going to have moments that, like, Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Holland, aka Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, are going to have some moments. So I think it's just going to be the films, but I'm in blackout mode right now on that movie. If a new trailer comes up, if a new TV segment comes on, I turn the channel, because I want less information, but I want the promise of good stuff when it comes to trailers now. The worst whatever, and this is when I started picking up on it, was Batman, The Dark Knight Rising. That movie was great. It wasn't perfect. Not as good as The Dark Knight, but there were so many things like leading up to it that all the trailers like stole the importance of. Like, there were certain things like the trailers should not have had in there. Like, they were great shots and great selling points, but my personal rule of thumb when it comes to trailers is you should only be taking footage from the first third of the movie, and then only shots of it at best, not even exchanges. So, because with Dark Knight Rising, there were so many things that you just got like bombarded with, and Avengers is doing the same thing. It's like, oh shit, Black Panther might outsell us. Good thing we have Black Panther in this movie, but we're gonna put the trailers because this is gonna be a pop culture event in places that people wouldn't normally look. We're gonna have them in, I don't know, Ellen's show. We're gonna have them in Oprah's show. We're going after women with this one. We're not just getting the comic book crowds. Like, we're going after Robert Downey Jr. fans. We're going after the fangirls. We're going after the kids. We're going after everybody. So, Avengers Infinity War is going to be the... I don't know about culmination, because I don't even know what Avengers 4 is going to be like. Originally, it was Avengers Infinity War, and then Avengers Infinity War Part 2. But supposedly, the movies are different enough that they deserve to be different movies, different titles. So, like, are they going with Avengers Dissembled already? Or Avengers End of the World for Part 4? I don't know. And besides, the Avengers numbering always got me off balance, because I always looked at Civil War as an Avengers movie, but really, apparently it was a Captain America movie. But it's not Captain America 3. So, I have no idea. Anyway, I started watching Lost in Space, and Lost in Space holds a very dear spot in my heart because my dad watched that as a kid, and when it was, I don't know if it was like the chicken or the egg, but like the movie was coming out in the late 90s, early 2000s with Matt LeBlanc and I want to say John Hurt and Gary Oldman, among others. Lacey Chabert was in it. I forget the kid's name. I think the kid went on to do decent work. I'm not sure. Anyway, that movie was a decent enough movie. I don't know how well it aged. I want to say Diamond Hansu was in there too. I'm not sure. But it was very basic CGI, or back in the day CGI. About a family that has a set, and it was kind of true to the TV show. Like there was definitely things in there like that went differently. I think they went darker in the movie, or tried to go darker, because anyway, because of that movie, or because of TV shows were on, I had interest in that movie, and I've seen the first episode of the Netflix, I've seen the first episode of the original, and I've seen the movie, and they're all different, but the Netflix one is, I've watched the first 3 episodes, I want to say, and it's stacked. Family drama, smart kids need to prove themselves. The robot looks cool, and the robot has its own arc in there, and they're doing a little bit like twists and stuff with Doctor, I want to say Smith, I think was the name. And in the original show, that was an interesting dynamic, because they went with it on the movie. Smith is a bad guy, but he's stuck with these people, and he was betrayed by the people that sent him to betray the family of explorers in space, and for 1960s television shows, like, that was like pretty dark in itself. It's like okay, you're a loose end, we're cutting you off and all that. So they did it the same thing with a movie, and I want to say they're doing it either on a bigger scale or a less so scale with the Netflix show. I don't know where it's going, but they have a really good cast of actors and actresses for the Netflix one, and the special effects are pretty decent with the Netflix one. The robot looks like a robot for the most part, but when it's not CG, it's a guy in a suit, and I can only imagine how that guy feels. That one is a little bit tougher because there's something about old TV shows that have robots that are just like the Twilight episode, robot episode is maybe the greatest robot episode of TV in all time, and I don't know for sure because I haven't watched Black Mirror. I know there's an episode that deals with robots that are pretty cool, but the 60s had like, oh, this is totally what an artificial intelligence is going to look like. It's like, nah, like they don't understand the concept of like, we want to think smaller and more efficient. So anyway, what else have I been watching? I started Wakfu season 3, and Wakfu is joy. It's an action show. It's a drama. It's a comedy. It's for kids. It's for the adults in the room as well, because it doesn't pander to kids the way other shows that are for kids do it. But it really is a truly all ages and a compelling all ages show. But what was it? So Wakfu, just to catch you up on seasons 1 and 2. Season 1 deals with a boy who makes friends, and they're looking for artifacts that'll defeat the bad guy. It's really simple, but it's the characterizations where it really shines, because you have one guy who has no nose, and he's not very smart, but just good guy, decent, determined, has a demon sword, and is really strong. Then you have the princess, who may be my favorite princess in all of like cartoons, because she's adventurous. She's sort of I don't want to say shallow, but the princess is definitely like, if Princess Leia didn't have a war to fight, I want to say that's what she would be like. And then you have the princess's best friend, who's an archer, and she's like the more reserved and more like dignified person, not a stick in the mud, but just like a like someone who takes things very seriously. Then you have the old dude, Ruel, and I had to turn off the English dubs in this one. Give me the original French, because this is a French cartoon. Give me the original French, because even though there's subtitles, like, I really like the personality that they gave the old guy in the French voice acting, as opposed to the English one, because the English one has him a little too proper. So that's the party. Season 2, it deals with the main hero's origins, which you can either go forward or you can go backward, and you can go forward while looking backward, and I think that's what a lot of season 2 shows do. They Like Arrow did it. Wakfu season 2 did it. I'm trying to think of other TV shows where it's like, we're going to progress the story by having things from your past come back and bite you in the ass. So okay. Season 3, one of the good guys turns bad, and they straight up ripped off Frieza from DBZ. I mean, legit, like, side-by-side comparison, it's totally Frieza. And what I love about this show is that each episode has its own personality, and while things are serious, like, there's certain little jokes here and there, there's certain, like, every character, like, side character, like, even if they never appear again, has personality, and there's something to that I really appreciate. So, comics that I'm not writing, because I talk about things that I'm supposed to be writing, and I gave up comics for Lent, so for an entire 40 days, I didn't read it. I read, but I didn't buy any comics. So I've been catching up on the books that I missed, and it's really annoying because the shops that I go to, and I go to a whole bunch, will have 6, 7, 9, 10, no 8, or I only need 33, and everywhere else has 34 and 35 and 32, but no 33. And it concludes the story that it was telling, so now I need, for real, to read that story first, because I don't want to have to deal with guessing what happened. There's nothing worse than reading something that's already spoiled, or seeing something that's already spoiled. And, like, I'm the type where I can, like, everyone complains about spoilers on the internet, but if you just stay off the internet, you don't have to worry about spoilers. Like, just live like a monk for a while. Don't talk to people about the things that you haven't seen. Don't go online looking for it, because that's usually what has to. Don't go online, period. If someone direct message you the spoilers, then they're an asshole and you immediately block them. Simple as that. So, in the time that I stopped reading comics, or stopped buying comics, Moonshine came back, Motor Crush came back. I'm looking for Wicked and Divine 33 to finish up the arc that was going. I have 34 and 35 ready to go. When I was at Big Apple Comic Con, I saw a couple things that I wanted to check out. So I picked up, there and around there, I picked up Canon by Wally Wood, which Canon by Wally Wood is James Bond on steroids. You have this, like, mentally adjusted, like the hero's name is Cannon, and he just goes in guns blazing, and like, the way he's described is, like, it's physically impossible for him to do things half-ass. And it's an adult book because every other page, if not every page, has a naked woman on it. Like either someone dying, getting shot, stabbed, or there's a naked woman on it. And I just, like, the 13-year-old brain in me really appreciates it, but when I look at, like, the technique that goes into it, because Wally Wood had an interesting process of making things. He would swipe things, he would trace things, he would cut and paste, but he would draw over it, or he would do things in such a way that it, like, he had other people drawing his stuff and he was inking over it, and it was his work. That's how, like much personality his inks had. So reading canon, reading Second Chances, which is the trade paperback that collects the stories that went into the Jason Todd becoming Robin, which to me, Jason Todd is my favorite Robin, which to say he's not the best Robin, but I really love the Red Hood character. Like, I really appreciate what Judd Winnick did, and I want to say Scott Lobdell did with the relaunch of the character, and Jeff Loeb in particular, because he opened up the door to this, and because Under the Red Hood is one of my favorite stories, and that came on the heels of Hush, which, read the Jason Todd chapter of Hush and tell me that's not, like, awesome. Between the way it's drawn and the way it's written, it's like one of the greatest Batman stories of all time. And you know what? I was going to talk about it in its own video, but I might as well just talk about it here, because why not? Action Comics had its 1000th issue recently, and I picked up a copy, and it was glorious. Right off the bat, you get the Dan Jurgens, who has been associated with Superman for, I want to say, the last 30 years. He started in the 80s on Superman, right after he did Booster Gold. If he didn't already do Superman before that, Jurgens and company, like, was the 80s and the 90s Superman, and into the 2000s and into now. Like, he's been on the character a long time, and it's been good work for the most part. Then the second story, I think it was, and I'm just like, the one that stood out to me was Kurt Swan art, or redone Kurt Swan art. I don't know the exact process they used. Supposedly it was like it was a reworked story, a remix story. And Kurt Swan did one of the greatest Superman stories. Not one of the greatest stories, but his era of Superman was great. And like, there's a lot of people like whose dads or whatever dads and moms will be like enthralled, because I want to say Kurt Swan did Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow with Alan Moore, and if that's the only Superman story you ever read, then you'll be very satisfied, just because if I'm getting it correctly, that one is it wraps up Superman before the Crisis. Stuff happens in the 80s, and like, it was so, I want to say, like, there's certain people that are in the room at the time, like, it's their opportunity. Like, I don't know how many, but there has to be so many things that Kurt Swan just, like, expanded into the mythology. So, like, it was a really nice touch having Kurt Swan stuff in the 1000th issue. So, I want to say two good stories in there was the Tom King story and the Scott Snyder story, because Tom King did a story about billions of years into the future. Superman is still around. His son is still around. He's been giving Lois the Infinity Serum or whatever, and I don't even think you really even see Superman. Like I'd have to go back and check. I know you see him around and you see the shape of him, but I don't know if it's as simple as like looking at like Superman directly on, but it's like Superman like on a gravestone to his parents, and he's coming to terms with them not being around anymore. And this is billions years from now. It takes him that long to stop visiting their grave, and that there was an emotional hit in that one that was it speaks to something that I think everyone feels. So the Scott Snyder one, I loved the end. There's a common criticism that Scott Snyder has trouble ending his stories, and I can understand why. So Scott Snyder did a Lex Luthor story, and it deals with his relationship to Superman, and I don't know what continuity they use, but it's just good old-fashioned Lex Luthor. He's always trying to do things to either further himself or kill Superman or what have you, and then there's a big reveal that Lex and Clark were friends at one point or something, which I'm not a huge fan of that setup, but I grew up with Smallville, and I grew up on various other eras where Lex was around Clark as a kid. So I can appreciate those types of stories. Probably my favorite drawn one, just because it hit a nerve for me, was the I want to say it was Brad Meltzer and John Cassaday. It deals, maybe I'm getting it wrong. It was definitely drawn by Cassaday, and so Superman has to get to a person before it's the simplest street crime too. It's a hostage situation, and Superman has to get there, and he has to go as fast as he possibly can, and even then it's by the will of the person who's being held captive that they survive. And the way it's drawn, I really wish, even though I know the book would take certain artists, I don't know what the hell happens. I understand that they draw really good, really good, but certain guys they're not suited for monthly schedules, because almost everywhere they go they have lateness issues, and some guys it's they can't stay healthy. It's a sports thing. They can't stay healthy, they can't make deadlines, or the person who they're working with, for whatever reason. I mean, I know in this particular case, there's certain things like writers that they've worked with take a little bit longer to get the scripts in. I mean, the reason why I'm still waiting on All-Star Batman and Robin 11 is and I mean the real one, not the Scott Snyder one that they were hey, All-Star Batman, look at this one. It's no, I mean the real one, with Jim Lee and Frank Miller. So could definitely use a new one of those. But Frank Miller won't write any more scripts until Jim Lee starts drawing some of them, so that's probably never going to happen. So, let's see. Got some nice shade. Alright, let's see. The Paul Dini one, written one. had appearances by Mxyzptlk, and I forget if like his if Gypsy was a Paul Dini creation from the animated show, or if that was in the actual comics. I'm not too big on Superman to begin with. I'm a bigger Batman head than a Superman guy, so the last story in there, like the Paul Dini one was good. Like I really liked the way that one was drawn. So the last Superman bit in there was because, like, of course they can't not use the landmark issue to advertise what's coming up. And the last story in there is drawn by Jim Lee, which I don't even know, like, it's probably going to get redrawn by, I think Bendis is working with Ivan Rice, and that's going to be a well-drawn book. Ivan Rice is one of those guys that just so good and does superheroes really well, and Bendis has a way of working with people and having a natural flow of things, and I loved that he had the Bendis flow with an action scene. It had the Bendis dialogue, but it wasn't the regular people. I'm not saying regular people. It was the regular people, but not Superman, not Supergirl having the Bendis dialogue. It was the regular people that Superman interacts with having the Bendis dialogue. My favorite line is like, "This happened to my cousin." It's like, red tornado came crashing through, but like, no, they didn't realize, like, look out for what's coming after red tornado. So I'm deeply considering getting the Man of Steel and Action Comics and Superman when it starts up again, because I think Bendis is going to write a miniseries, and he's going to take over the two Superman titles of Action and Superman. So I'm leaning towards Action Comics on this one, just because it's promising, like, the home life of Superman, like his life at the Daily Planet, because Superman busting on people, to me, is not really because when you know the hero is going to win, or the hero is going to lose for the time being, when you know that, and like, it's boring. Like, you know who's going to win. It's a sure thing. So at least with the human stuff, where it's like Clark as a reporter, reporting on stories and doing investigative journalism, like, that's where the struggle is. Because like, you can't punch your way out of those situations, and like, Superman is a journalist. That's like one of the most overlooked parts of his mythos, but like, the guy just like that's why, like, the Louise Simonson one, where Superman is on a deadline to get a story in, and he has 5 minutes till the presses roll. Back when, like, newspapers were like, well, they're still printed, they're newspapers, but anyway, when those afternoon deadlines, like, really matter, he goes out and saves people that are stuck on a train and all that stuff. And so if you're not a Superman fan, this is the book I start with, because the love of the character in this book shines, and I'm surprised that there weren't there are certain creators, like, I know that, I think they signed exclusive deals. I think that's why they couldn't work on it, because if you told me, like, 10 years ago that Mark Waid wouldn't be on a Superman 1000, like, I would be very surprised, because him and Alex Ross are huge Superman fans, and it just was in the works. So next year, I think they're doing Batman 1000, and that's going to be an interesting one, because Batman has, I want to say, 4 or 5 generations where he really matters. I mean, he's like the second biggest superhero at DC, but Batman in the, I think he came out in 39, I want to say 39, he came out. He came out either 6 months or a year after Superman did, but I do know that Detective Comics is older than Action Comics, or because Detective Comics did not start with Batman like the way Action Comics started with Superman. Detective Comics, it wasn't until 27 that, and I don't know how the hell they're going to do it, because maybe they do, for Tech 1000, they do like a Slam Bradley story in it, because that's the guy that started with the book, and they do a lot of Batman stuff and a lot of I'm trying to think of how many characters were Detective Comics, because I think there's been a couple eras where Detective Comics was Detective Comics, not just the other Batman book. So, like, they could have, like, detective characters, like Elongated Man, Dr. 13, because I know that Detective Comics, like, it's either had a Batman story in a lot of the issues with a backup, or, like, I couldn't tell you. Like, I'm curious how they're going to do it. But I do know that for Detective Comics 1027, they are having a Batman extravaganza. They are going to have cover-to-cover Super Batman creators, which they might do for 1,000, but I would much rather, like, them split it up so that it's like the 1,000th issue is all the best creators working on detective stories, like with Batman or around Batman, and the other detective characters, and then they do the same thing over again with new creators or new stories for the Batman and the Batman family. But that's next year, and that's a couple years away for having the 27th issue after 1,000. So, fucking allergies. I hate allergies. I hate spring for the particular reason that you could be in your car and you can't get comfortable. You just cannot absolutely get comfortable. So, alright, what else can I talk about? Alright, might as well get into goals for the weekend. Goals for the weekend. I found out my tattoo guy is opening up his own shop, so I want to say congratulations to him. However, I have a gift certificate to his old place, which I'm going to have to use, so I'm going to use that as soon as possible, so I know that I did it. And then, so I gotta get in touch with them. I'm going to work on the Octal book, that the Octal packet, I should say. Right now we're in the log line. We're workshopping log lines for the stories, and that's interesting. Like, just getting other people's perspective on something that's so inside your own head. And I'm leaning towards the Uncle Sam story I want to do, and the Call of the Void, which is like a crime book, sort of. It's a coming-of-age crime book. And Uncle Sam is the literal Uncle Sam character, which is public domain. And all I'm going to say is, I had the idea before, but I read Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and I'm very much influenced by that with this, just the way to approach it, and like, I'm just gonna go from there. So, Shield Lad, gonna get that done, and Some of you may have noticed I have not yet posted the videos from Big Apple Comic-Con. So I'm going to do that over the weekend. I'm going to post them, and like that's going to be my goals. Like the Big Apple Comic-Con stuff, and a goddamn chapter of Shield Lad. And I'm going to even throw it in a stream. So it's going to be the YouTube videos, the stream, and a Shield Lad chapter. And I'll tell you what, I will even on my Instagram stories, I will do the Shield Lad stuff. So check out my Instagram at MWKale, and peace.